You walk into a room, and before anyone says a word, you already know something is off. Nobody raised their voice. There's no argument. Just a glance that skipped past someone. A smile that arrived half a second too late. You caught it. Nobody else did. Most people would call that a gift. Sharp instincts. A talent for reading people. It rarely feels like a gift from the inside, because that radar doesn't switch off when you leave the room. You carry the moment home, lay it out, and turn it over for hours. A silence everyone else forgot the instant it happened. Here's what most people never realize. This isn't really intelligence. It's a system that was built to keep you safe and never learned how to stand down. And it leaves signs, specific ones, the kind that show up in people who notice everything and quietly pay for it. You're going to recognize more of them than you'd like. It starts with the most visible one. It shows on the outside, if someone's watching closely. You go a little quieter than the rest. You're the one scanning, while everyone else is just there, talking, laughing, present in a way that seems to cost them nothing. Two coworkers exchange a look across the meeting table. Half a second, no words. And you've already mapped the whole thing. The disagreement underneath it. Who's annoyed at whom? The thing that got said before you walked in. Everyone else keeps talking. They didn't catch it. You did. This is the part people tend to envy. The read on the room. The sense for what nobody's saying out loud. But notice what it actually costs you. While everyone else is simply in the moment, half of you is standing slightly outside it, taking notes. You're rarely just at the dinner. You're also watching the dinner. That's not intuition being magical. That's a system that never learned how to clock out. And that system doesn't stay in the room. It follows you home. This is where it starts to get expensive. Your boss messages you at 4 p.m. Can we talk later? 3 words. For most people, that's a calendar entry. For you, it's a wave. You read it twice. You catch a coldness in the phrasing that may not even be there. And before you've typed a single word back, you've run a dozen versions of what it might mean. And you've already found the one where it ends badly. Then you carry it through the afternoon, through dinner. The meeting turns out to be about parking or a form you forgot to sign. Nothing. But you spent 4 hours somewhere else entirely. Psychologists have a name for part of this. The default mode network, the brain's resting state system, the one that's supposed to go quiet when there's nothing to solve. In most people, at rest, it powers down. In minds like yours, it tends to stay switched on. So the moment there's a gap, a silence, a wait, a 3-word message, you slide straight back into interpreting. This looks like overthinking, like anxiety you should be able to talk yourself out of. It isn't a flaw in you. Your engine just never idles. It hums, even when you're trying to sleep. The scanning doesn't only point outward either. At some point, the camera turns around and aims at you. You feel sad, walking down the street on an ordinary afternoon. And instead of just being sad, you open a case file on it. Why am I sad? I have a good life. What right do I have to feel this? The feeling barely lands before the judgment drops on top of it. Even the good moments get inspected. You laugh at something genuinely funny at dinner, and half a second later, a part of you floats up near the ceiling and asks whether that laugh sounded fake. Psychologists call this metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. It runs out of the prefrontal cortex, and everybody has some of it. In you, it's a switch that never turns off. You probably already knew you narrate your own feelings. That part isn't news. Here's the part that might be. It's the exact reason you're so rarely all the way inside them. It's like dancing while watching yourself in a mirror, fixing your posture the whole time. You don't miss a step, but you lose the music. Then the analysis moves into your relationships, and something quiet goes missing that you can't quite name at first. A coworker brings you a coffee you didn't ask for and says something warm about the project you just finished. And before you can enjoy a single word of it, your mind is already moving. What do they want? Why now? What comes after this? You started seeing the backstage of people, the motive tucked behind the gesture, the fear hiding under the confidence, the small favor folded quietly inside the compliment. There's a name for the machinery here. Theory of mind. The mind's ability to model what other people are thinking and wanting. In you, it runs hot. It doesn't switch off when a gift is just a gift. From the outside, this reads as cynical, like you've gone cold or hard to please or suspicious of nice things. It isn't coldness. It's a kind of innocence you lost somewhere along the way. The ability to take the surface of someone's words at face value. A compliment now always seems to carry a second layer. An apology feels like it's managing you, not meeting you. You don't hate anyone for it. You just got very, very careful. And carrying that everywhere is lonelier than it looks. Because you're seeing a layer the people around you don't even know is there. Which turns out to explain something bigger. Something you feel most on the days that should have been easy. The ordinary ones you somehow come home from completely hollowed out. Here's the part that actually is a gift, even if it's the heaviest one you carry. You don't decide to be empathetic when a friend starts crying. It isn't a setting you reach over and switch on. It's just on, all the time, whether you want it or not. A stranger on the bus taps their foot with nervous, jittery energy, and your own heartbeat picks up to match a worry that isn't even yours. And then there are the real ones. A friend sits across from you and tells you their marriage is ending. You listen. You say the right things, the gentle things. You drive home, and that ache doesn't leave with them. It moves into your chest and it sits there, not for an hour, for 3 days. You catch yourself thinking about it while you're doing the dishes days later, carrying a grief that was never yours to hold. There's a name for the wiring. Mirror neurons, the cells that fire in your brain as though someone else's experience were happening to you. Most people have them running quietly in the background. In you, it doesn't stop at understanding what someone feels. You absorb it. So you become the one everyone confides in, the one who softens a room without trying, the one who always seems to find the careful words. People feel genuinely understood around you, and they love you for it. And that's exactly why you're so tired. You quietly became the container everyone empties into, and almost no one stops to wonder who's holding what's yours. It doesn't even stay in your mind. Eventually, it moves into your body. You drink an espresso. Your heart speeds up a little. Caffeine doing exactly what caffeine does. For most people, that just registers as feeling awake. Your nervous system reads it as a bulletin. It flips through its files, finds fast heartbeat, and pushes the alert to the front. Danger. Something's coming. Brace. So an ordinary sensation becomes a warning. The alarm raises your heart rate a little more, which confirms the alarm, which raises it again. A loop that feeds itself with no clean way out. There's a word for the sense being turned up too high. Interoception. The brain reading the body's internal signals, run largely through a region called the insular cortex. In you, it's finely, almost painfully tuned. You can be sitting perfectly still at your desk. Nothing wrong, nothing happening. And your body is running an emergency broadcast about a threat that does not exist. You feel uneasy, restless, braced, and there's nothing to point at. That's the part that wears you down. Not the fear of something. The fear of nothing in particular, all day. And all of it adds up to a loneliness most people never quite manage to understand. You can be in a full room, surrounded by people who genuinely like you, people who'd show up if you called. And still, there's this quiet apartness, this pane of glass you can't find the edges of. It's not because anyone shuts you out. That's what makes it so hard to explain to anyone. It's because no one else in the room seems to be seeing what you're seeing. From the outside, this can look like aloofness, like you're holding yourself a little above everyone, keeping a cool distance on purpose. It's the exact opposite. You're not above the room. You're buried deeper in it than anyone else, reading the layers, catching the undercurrents, tracking 6 conversations happening under the one out loud, with no one to turn to and check whether you saw it too. That's a specific kind of alone, not the alone of an empty house, the alone of being the only one who noticed. You've probably felt it for years without ever having the words for it. And underneath even this, there's one more thing running, the quietest of them all, and the one that turns out to explain what all this watching was ever for. Somewhere along the way, all that awareness stopped being observation and turned into a strategy. You may never have noticed the moment it happened, The belief underneath it is rarely said out loud, even to yourself. It goes something like this. If I can see every way this might go wrong, then nothing can blindside me. I won't be destroyed by it because I'll have seen the landing point coming from a mile off. So the mind runs simulations, endlessly, quietly, in the background. You lie awake, pre-living a loss that hasn't happened and may never happen, rehearsing the phone call, the conversation, how you'd hold yourself together if the worst actually arrived. You live in 10 versions of a future, and most of them hurt. From the outside, this looks like being prepared, responsible, the one who thinks ahead, who's never caught off guard. But look at the trade you made without ever agreeing to it. In trying to stay one step ahead of every possible pain, you slowly stepped out of your own life, standing at the edge of it, managing it like a high-risk project, instead of living inside it. Protection quietly took the place of presence, and you ended up exhausted, night after night, guarding against ghosts that never showed. That's the real cost of seeing this much, not the seeing itself, what you gave up to keep watching. So put them all together, and here's what they are not. They're not proof that something in you is broken. And they're not a superpower either, whatever the internet likes to call it. They're depth. Either it was built into you from the first day, or it was built early, quickly, because noticing everything was once the thing that kept you safe. And then you kept carrying it, long after the danger was gone, into rooms where nothing was ever wrong. The awareness was never the problem. It can't be switched off, and honestly, it shouldn't be. Asking you to see less would be like asking someone to make their own clear vision blurry on purpose. But the intensity, that can change. You can turn it down from a laser that hunts for every flaw in every room into something closer to a candle, bright enough to still understand people the way only you do, soft enough, finally, to warm the person holding it. The goal was never to see less. It was to stop carrying everything you see. That's the whole shift. Not a quieter mind, a lighter one. If this named something in you, the thread runs on into the people who feel too much, the ones who absorb a room and can't put it back down. That one's worth staying for too.